yet. Have you ever wondered if there's more to life than this? Welcome to The Way Back, a haven of spiritual inspiration, guidance and revelation. A beacon lighting the way on your journey of spiritual growth and awakening. I am Mark Zaretti, and since 1981 I've been proactively seeking the truth. In the late 90s I started sharing what I've discovered with wonderful people just like you, teaching classes, giving talks and working one-on-one with people. I've also written books, created online courses, podcasts, videos, documentaries, and appeared in magazines and even on the radio. In 2018, something profound and awe-inspiring happened, which truly changed my life forever, and I finally started to understand my role in a much bigger picture. This is a picture that you are also a part of, whether you realise it or not. As a result, I co-founded The Way Back, a not-for-profit group, to freely share resources and foster a supportive community to help people to spiritually awaken, people just like you. For everyone seeking real change, this show is for you. As too it is for those who want to make more sense of life, or to understand their deeper purpose. I have spent thousands of hours in deep meditation, transcending the mind and limits of self, and though I do not have all the answers, I have been patiently guided to learn how to bring down higher knowledge. A part of my role is to share this higher knowledge with you, to help you make the most of the opportunity life presents. It is not just about information though, it is about a deeper state, and the truth is that most people will never realise their potential. It's not surprising though, since we're so distracted by everyday life, and there are so many pitfalls and dead ends for the seeker of truth. I know. I've experienced many of these myself, and so my goal is to help you avoid those mistakes and to save your precious time so you can focus more on real, lasting spiritual growth. This is a journey we are all on, and this live show is as much about you as it is about me and everyone who contributes. It's our show. Each week you will learn something new or go deep into what you already know, and you can ask questions, share your own stories and insights, and spend a sacred hour in the company of fellow spiritual souls and seekers of truth. You may have heard me say, to seek the truth is to seek God. But this isn't about religion. This transcends belief. It's about you and your direct experience of spiritual awakening, reaching out and touching that which is beyond time. Let us take the next steps along the way back to truth and ultimately the source, God, together. This is a journey towards the light and out of the darkness. I can show you the way. The question is simply, do you want to know the truth or stay in the dark? God bless you. Good evening, this is Mark, and this is The Way Back, discussing spirituality, the live show. But tonight we will not be discussing spirituality, but I will be answering some questions that I got asked recently. It will all make sense in a minute. But tonight's also a bit different. We're actually multicasting tonight, so in theory, although I don't know, we're actually live on Facebook and YouTube at the same time. But we've got a number of people in the live chat on Rumble, and that's where we normally broadcast. So if you're kind of on YouTube or Facebook and thinking, what's going on here? well, you've been missing out, because this is episode number 80. And so this is the first one you've come across. The good news is there's a bit of a back archive to go through as well. But tonight's show I'm going to press on with, because it's a really important topic. They always are. But this is kind of related to stuff that people have been asking me recently in some of the private chats, and also in some of the group online meetups that we do. And the kind of working title for tonight is the Adulthood User Guide. Now, that's a pretty bold statement. So look, I'm not going to claim this is a definitive guide on adulthood or anything like that. And obviously, look, this is a spiritual show, so there may be a bit of a spiritual leaning. But when I said it's not going to be spiritual discussion tonight, I'm not going to be talking about the higher stuff. I'm going to be talking about down here, life, everyday stuff like that. And in other words, stuff that's really applicable to all of us. And in particular, do you fall into any of these categories? The answer is going to be yes, by the way. But are you a parent, or do you have parents, or did you have parents? Are you, let's just say, are we below the age of 18, or are you over the age of 18? And look, we're all going to fit into one or two of those categories. And if you're older than 18, then there was a time when you were younger than 18, so you can relate to this as well. And the reason why I'm asking that is because adulthood kind of starts at 18. That's where the flag is stuck in the ground. But it's also because something changes in terms of us as people. And it's not just because we have a birthday party, or there's some symbolic legal thing, like, you can now go to prison. It's none of that. It's actually something more deep inside gets triggered and happens around about that age as well. But that's about as far into that kind of stuff as we're going to go. The goal is to keep it really applicable to as many people as possible. So it is episode 80 on the 9th of October 2025, and I just realised that's, if you look at the numbers, it's 080910. So maybe there's something special going to happen. Who knows? If you buy into numerology, that is. And I'm just looking at the chat as well, because we have a live chat, so you can get involved if you're on Rumble, but you can also comment on YouTube and Facebook. And Panther9's just said, I'm just jumping out to see if it's on Facebook and YouTube, because this is the first time that I'm trying this particular approach. And so if you are joining us from YouTube land, welcome. If you're joining us from Facebook land, welcome. I don't know if we'll always be on YouTube and Facebook. There's a reason why we're on Rumble, and it's to do with being able to talk in a grown-up way about grown-up subjects without being censored. But tonight's show, I'm hopeful we can just cruise through on all three platforms. So do say hello wherever you are, and welcome. It's great to have you joining me. So back to the slides for tonight. Then what are we actually going to be covering? Well, first thing is, most people never talk about this. And look, if you have ever had kids and they get to a certain age, then there's that chat, okay? But we're not talking about that chat. But just think, some of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight, people don't discuss. Maybe people don't even realise, but it's important stuff. And yet people will go through the awkwardness of having a conversation about adult stuff with their their adolescent children, and so if you can face that, then you should be able to face what we're going to discuss tonight. 3 important things in life that it's really handy to know. Most of us probably survived without knowing, but it's kind of along the lines of, I wish I knew. If I'd known then, it would have been maybe made my life a lot easier, that kind of thing. And then strategies to get it right. So towards the end, I'm going to be sharing strategies on how to get it right. And so let's dive in. And yes, we have people on YouTube as well, so that's really, really good. This is a bit of a reminder. Occasionally I may reference stuff from previous episodes, and if I say anything and say something along the lines of, and I covered this in this episode, in the podcast write-up, I always put all of the links to absolutely everything that I mention, including external resources. I like to bring receipts, as they say. So if I reference something, then you'll be able to link through to it. And that will be in the podcast that will normally come out a few days after this show. But this is just a reminder for those of us that have not seen this before or forgotten this information. So we covered this in episode 74. And this is a timeline from when you're born to when you die. And we on average, about 84 years. So you've got not a lot going on until about the age of 11, and then things start to ramp up. What does that mean? Well, this green curve, which kind of hits its peak at 18 and then stays at that level throughout, is to do with how much free will do you have, how much responsibility, personal responsibility do you have, and how much accountability. And this is in no way a legal thing. This is no function as human beings. How much autonomy, kind of in terms of our ability to make choices and the consequences and accountability of those choices, that kind of thing. So talking about free will and stuff. So the take home is that you start to kind of stand on your own 2 feet around about 11 and 12, and then there's a bit of a ramp up, but you're still not there until you hit 18, and then you're there fully. So not talking legally, but talking more as humans, we really are truly adult at 18. There's still growth, there's still change, there's still learning until until we fall down and we're pushing up the daisies. But in terms of our capacity to be at full function, it doesn't really kick in till 18. That's really what we're saying here. And so let's summarize then what this all means. So once you're 18, you can fully enjoy your free will, responsibility and accountability. You can, and the key word is can. It doesn't necessarily mean you do. It just means you can. Okay, so there may be reasons why people don't, as it says up there, you can. There may be reasons why people don't actually engage with their free will, even once they're 18. And so we'll be looking into that. And you definitely want to be on the side of things where you do engage with your free will. And this means that you have choices in life. Okay, so once you're 18, you can engage with your free will, responsibility and accountability, and it means you have choices in life. And that's really, really kind of important. Okay, and then there are different ways you can make those choices. So we'll be going through how people actually make choices, and are some ways better than others, what's the difference and what's the outcome. And then if you take nothing home other than this one point, what you choose today defines who you become tomorrow. And I've tried to write that out in a way that is nice and catchy so we can remember it, but it is absolutely true. What you choose today defines who you become tomorrow. Actually, if you wanted to be pedantic, it defines who you are from that moment on. The moment you make a choice, it defines you. Okay? And then, do you want to be a good person or a bad person? Genuine question. Do you want to be a good person or a bad person? And what does that actually mean? So we're going to be exploring that. And, because I'm talking to you right now, and you might be someone in your 60s who is a parent, has been a parent, kids have grown up, maybe becoming a grandparent, or maybe you're a 16-year-old approaching 17, 18, or you just turned 18. And so I'm to kind of to appeal to the younger generation, then if life is a computer game, how do you win? But do you know what? I remember reading an article a few years ago, and it said that the biggest growth of kind of uptake of people getting into computer gaming was women in their 50s. Okay, so maybe I'm talking to you if you're a woman in your 50s as well. But you know what? We're all someone's child, and if we're lucky, we're someone's uncle or auntie, or someone's parent, or someone's grandparent. And so what I'm going to share with you tonight will help you help whoever you can, whether it's grandchildren or nephews or nieces or your own children, but it will also help you. Okay? And if you've yet to have children or become an auntie or a grandparent, then just, keep this one in here for down the line, but apply it to yourself for now, So it really does apply to all of us, wherever we are. And the nice thing is, what I'm saying really is that, and you can help other people with the knowledge that you're going to get from today's show. And this is a live show, so as ever, just a quick reminder, in the chat, if you want to ask me questions, put a question mark, just a symbol, question mark, and then your question. And at the end, if there's time, I'll go through all the questions. And obviously, if you comment during the show on anything, if I can, I'll bring it up if it's relevant at that point as well. But it's great to have you all there. And Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. But I would always say, if you haven't been on Rumble before, follow us on Rumble. You'll find all our videos, and this is where we are every single week. So you're missing out if you're not on Rumble. But I'm glad you're here today. So let's press on with, if life is a computer game, how do you win? Okay. So, number one, you live in duality. And I've thrown a whole load of stuff on the screen there, and I'll read some of them out. But we've got things like deceiver, forgiving, truthful, critical, graceful, glutton, good, proud. You get the idea. There's different qualities within duality. Duality is another way of saying creation or just life around us, So we live in duality. And what am I describing here? I could have said hot and cold, sunny and dark, winter and summer. These would also be accurate descriptors, but these would be descriptors more of environmental stuff. What I'm describing here is more the character of ourselves and people around us stuff. But this is the environment that we live in. So there are greedy people, there are faithful people, there are graceful people, there are good people, there are gluttons, etc. So it kind of helps if we want to understand this metaphor, because that's what it is. If life is a computer game, okay, what's the environment? Because that's what you've got to engage with and operate within. So I'm kind of laying out the groundwork here, that the environment are all these different qualities of character, and it gets more complicated. So, we've got some more there: disrespect, cheater, lazy, vulgar, steadfast, humble, emotional, calm, disciplined, etc. So you get the picture. And we've got all these boxes on the screen now. And I'm just going to do a little game with you. We're talking about computer games. So I'm going to do a little game with you. I'm going to read all of these out. I'll do it as quick as I can, but I'll put a tiny pause in between each one. And here's the game. It's just between you and you. Okay? As I read each one out, I want you to just be honest with yourself and say, kind of gauge, does that apply to me? Being honest, okay? Not how do other people perceive me, not how do I want people to perceive me, but just a bit of a moment of honest introspection to kind of gauge where you're at with yourself. No one's going to know the answer, what comes up, except for you, but it's a really good opportunity just to kind of tune in a little bit with yourself. So as I read each one out, there's no judgment. We've all been there. We've all got these things in us. So simple question is, if you were to kind of, as I say it, is it strong? Yes, no, or not really. Okay. So in the order that I can read them out as they come across the screen. So just tune in with yourself now. Disrespectful, deceiving, humble, grateful, glutton, caring, thief, lazy, graceful, respectful, cheating, greedy, emotional, charitable, critical, bad, noisy, generous, steadfast, accepting, calm, good, disciplined, ungrateful, selfish, proud, faithful, forgiving, peaceful, truthful, vulgar, bitter, aggressive, quiet. Okay, and only you will know which ones kind of resonated and you went, yeah, okay, yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I've been there. And that's good. It's just a moment of calibration, a moment of, let's just stick with this metaphor. If this was a computer game, then in this game, these are the traits of your character that you're playing at this time. Question is, genuine question, can things change? Okay, was there anything in there that kind of went, ooh, hang on a sec, not so sure about that, I don't want to admit to that. And obviously there was some good stuff in there as well. So was there stuff that you went, yeah, actually, that I can be honest and say that those good things are there as well. Okay, so obviously the name duality suggests dual. So you can split this down the middle and say, okay, some of them are good and some of them are bad. In fact, the word good and the word bad are in there somewhere as well. Let's just see if I can grab my pointer and help point them out. So there's the word good down there, and there's the word bad up there. And I wonder if any others are direct opposites. So for example, deceiver is one, and truthful would be the complete opposite. So are you someone that's truthful, or are you someone that is a deceiver? Or at times have you been truthful, and at times have you been deceiving, etc. But this pretty much represents duality, and it looks like a pizza, really. It's all over the place, and that's life. That's also how we are a lot of the time. We're not one thing all the time. But let's just bring a little bit of kind of order into this so we can understand it better. So as I said, really the division is between bad and good. So I've put the bad stuff in red and the good stuff in green. And if I list some of the bad stuff that was in that list, so now we can see it more clearly. So we've got disrespect, deceiver, proud, greedy, glutton, bitter, cheater, noisy. So the opposite of that would be, so disrespect becomes respect, deceiver is truthful, proud becomes humble, greedy becomes charitable, glutton becomes disciplined, bitter becomes forgiving, cheater, faithful, noisy, quiet. You get the idea. And that's a really nice way of understanding duality. Everything's got its balance. Everything's got its opposite. Okay. So the rest of the bad stuff, I'll just go through very quickly. So we've got emotional. Now that, by the way, the fact that I say emotional is bad, that might surprise you, but I did an entire show talking about emotions. And a lot of what people think are good emotions aren't really good emotions. So if you want to kind of dig a bit deeper into why I'm saying that being emotional is not necessarily a good thing, then I definitely recommend checking out that episode. But for now, I'm just laying it out there, and we can see where this takes us. So emotional, critical, aggressive, vulgar, selfish, thief, ungrateful, and lazy. And the opposites. Emotional, the opposite is calm. Critical is accepting. By the way, critical, you could also phrase that as judgmental. Aggressive becomes peaceful. Vulgar becomes graceful. Selfish becomes caring. Thief becomes generous. Ungrateful becomes grateful. And lazy becomes steadfast. And look, there are other words that would have appropriate meanings, and this is not a complete list. So, with the list on the screen, there's probably words that you could add that you're thinking, why hasn't he put that in there? And the simple reason is because there's not enough time in the day, there's not enough space on the screen. But obviously this just gives us an idea. There's a lot more that we could add to this list. And the question is, where do these things come from? Where do you see yourself in all of this? Just the basic questions of, well, why is it like this? Well, how is it like this? How do people become bad? How do people become good? Those kinds of questions. But more important than that is choose your side. Because this is one of the big things about that people don't realise about life. And you see it playing out. You see it playing out maybe a little bit in politics, maybe a little bit in other arenas. And there's a saying, when they came for this group, I didn't speak out. When they came for this group, I didn't speak out. When they came for me, there was no one to help me because everyone else had already been taken, that kind of thing. In other words, you can't just be neutral. You can't pretend to be Switzerland. Switzerland isn't neutral, they're just hiding all the money from both sides. But basically, in life, you actually, whether you realise it or not, there's a choice. So I'm asking you, this is a moment where maybe you've never been asked this or you've never thought about this before. Which side do you choose? Honestly, do you choose the bad side or the good side? And let's just go back to understand that choice. See, you probably never thought about that, but I can guarantee most people watching this, in fact, most people around the world, have actually already made their choice. And I'll give you an example. If you've decided that the most important thing in your life is to be a millionaire or a billionaire, then that's a greedy path. Okay? But if that's what you're prioritizing, you've made your choice. If you've decided that that your choice in life is to have as many affairs with married women as possible, then you've made your choice. If you want to be a famous rapper and you want to be singing songs that are obscene and vulgar and promoting aggression, etc., for example, because that is a choice that some people make, then again, that person's made that choice. But they never sat down and went, I'm going to be team bad or I'm going to be team good. So what I'm doing here is really stripping it down to the truth of the matter, which is that we do make choices. We do choose our sides. It's a question of what are you prioritizing in your life? What have you decided is the most important thing? Is it chasing wealth? Is it chasing body count? Is it chasing the good stuff? Like just wanting a life of peace. But we're making choices, and our choices are choosing our side. So what I'm saying is, let's do it at a higher level. Did anyone ever sit down with you and actually say, look, fundamentally, you can simmer down all character traits of people to good or bad, and which side you want to be on, okay? So choose your side. Choose which team you want to play for, okay? That's really powerful, rather than it happening as a consequence of choices that you've made where you didn't even realise you were choosing a side. Now you have an opportunity to make a conscious choice. So just have a think about that for a moment. And hopefully, if you're watching right now, if you're on this stream and you're listening again or watching again, hopefully you're team good, but it is your choice, okay? And that, it's between you and you. You don't need to tell me. I'm just saying that there is a choice to be made, okay? And knowing that is actually, most people don't realise. So knowing that there's a choice to be made is actually really, really empowering. Okay, so where does this stuff come from? Because I asked the question. I put the question mark there. One of the questions, do you think that it's ingrained into us genetically? Do you think it's when we're born the die is cast? Do you think it's environment, diet? Do you think it's a lot of different things? I can certainly say that there are things that will nurture the bad or the good. So let's have a look at that. So if you look at a lot of music lyrics, especially in certain genres of music, then some of these things like disrespecting others, being judgmental of others, aggression, vulgarity, pride, greed are extolled, promoted, held up as virtue in some genres. And so if you think about young people, or any people really, but particularly people who are impressionable and still forming an opinion about life, if they're, they've got their headphones on, I could put mine on just to demonstrate the point, but they've got their headphones on, they're immersed into their music, and they're listening on repeat to lyrics, the same song many times a day, that is talking about violence or abusing people or disrespecting one of the men or women, etc., or disrespecting people because of the colour of their skin, that kind of thing. Well, then that's team bad, isn't it? Because it's all those negative things. Social media. There's so many studies done now that basically being too critical of yourself, hating yourself, low self-esteem, misinformation. So, and I don't mean that, but like propaganda, that side of things. So, deception and stuff like that. People are being conditioned, etc. So social media generally is team bad. Hollywood and TV. We could really go down the rabbit hole with Hollywood, but it's now coming out that the CIA uses or has used Hollywood for many, many years to sell a narrative to the people, and it's a social engineering experiment, really. It's a psyops. And the same with TV. And there's a big thing at the moment about Netflix trying to groom young impressionable children into trans ideology through a lot of their children's shows, and that's kind of breaking at the moment in the last week. So there's a good example. So woke education, so again the kind of extreme ideologies that are being promoted, and things like telling kids not to tell your parents, trying to break up the family dynamic. That side of things is what I'm referring to here. So not so much the content, although a lot of it is questionable, but the attitude of driving a wedge between children. I mean, we're talking 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, driving a wedge between children and their parents so that the state becomes the primary informer of that kid's identity, if that makes sense. And then games, and by that I predominantly mean computer games. So I don't know if you guys know, I'm in the process of writing another book. I've hit a landmark of 150 pages on the new book, so I'm well into it now. And I was just looking at a study on how computer games affect people as one of the chapters in that book. And violent computer games make people violent. It's as simple as that. So if you think about how many hours kids are playing on computer games, and if they're playing, I don't know, Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty or Halo or whatever the kids play these days. It used to be Doom 2 when I was a young man, but it's violence and playing violence and watching violence. So this would also mean film and TV. Exposure to violence increases the violence of the person. It's as simple as that, and that's again scientifically proven stuff. So it's looking pretty dire, isn't it? Because most of what we consider entertainment and most of what we're exposed to seems to be not so good. So is there some good news, please, Mark? Well, on the team good side, loving family. You can't choose your family, but if you're blessed to have family that love you and that you love, they are one of your strongest assets. And by the way, there's this whole idea that we in the West, particularly, I mean, this is like part of the American dream. This is what we've been indoctrinated into in education and growing up. I was born in the 70s, so I've seen this, that you're supposed to get to a certain age and then you've got to leave home and get a career and forge your own path and make your own way and be a man or be a woman, be a success, make money. Okay. Who are the most powerful people on the planet? I'm not saying they're good, by the way, but if you think about who are the most powerful people on the planet, you probably start thinking about Rockefellers, Rothschilds, the Windsors, the House Balmoral, they're families, aren't they? That's my point. Why do they call it dynasties? Because families that work together, that stick together, that build something and pass it on from generation to generation are the power players, are the successful ones. So what does our indoctrination through education and media and everything over the last 60, 70 years tell us? As soon as you're old enough, leave the family home. Go to another city. Fly to the other side of the world. Go and spread your wings. Stretch your legs. We're encouraged to break up the family. That is to our detriment. That is social engineering. That is to break up your support network. That is to put stress on your family, because you, at your peak, are no longer part of the family, because you're now having to buy your own house, get your own debt, introduce another mortgage, another strain. So if you look at traditionally, cultures were multi-generational, under one roof, everyone supporting everyone doing their bit, but together. So family is one of the most powerful things on Team Good. Community. So again, it's only recently that people would get to a certain age and then travel halfway around the world and set down new roots. Well, how do you set down new roots if you haven't severed the old roots, if you haven't damaged the tree? Okay, so community. You're born into a community, you grow up in a community, you have all your friends around you, you share, you bond, you have the same interests because you're in the same environments. Okay, and then if you relocate, and I've been there, I've relocated, then everything's new and it sets you back. It really does. And you can grow from it, you can learn from it, but ultimately you actually kind of harm yourself. And that's why a lot of what we're taught or encouraged to do by TV and the media and education and stuff, oh no, as soon as you're old enough, go and travel around the world, go and travel as far away as you can from your family, and maybe just send them a postcard. No, family is your power base, community is your power base. Wise elders. Now I put wise. Being old does not make you wise, okay? So if you're looking at this and you're younger and you think, what does he mean by wise elders? I don't mean just because someone's old. But everyone, young or old, has valid opinions and has experiences. So don't write people off. But what I'm saying is there anyone in your life who has demonstrated goodness and is old? Maybe it's your grandmother or your grandfather, or your, in Italian, nonna and nonno. Maybe it's an uncle or an auntie. They're not just there for Christmas cards and birthday cards and a slice of cake. One of my memories is I think it was about 11 or 12, and I started to really, Granddad on my mother's side I was chatting to him, and he was starting to open up, and he was telling me stories about when he was a young man and he had to join the army and what they did, and he was, from my perspective, he was getting interesting. Really, it was the other way around. I was now old enough to start to understand some of this stuff, and he probably thought, Mark's getting interesting, I can talk to him at last. And then sadly he passed away, and that was one of the first times I realised that the older generations have so much to give. If only we give them something back, our time. Okay? But it's more than that. They've got knowledge. They've got wisdom. They've got life that they can share. And if they're family or closely connected, then they want you to succeed as well. So what an amazing resource on Team Good that probably gets overlooked by most people. So if you have someone who's a wise elder, or if you are a wise elder, recognize it for what it is, an amazing role to help support Team Good, the next generation, or 2 generations down, or whatever it is. And then what else? This is an interesting one. Classic stories. So I've been following someone on Rumble who reads stories from the Grimm brothers, and the Grimm brothers recognise the same problems that we're seeing nowadays with modern society, the breakdown of our cultures and our societies, and degradation of morals, and they were worried about it. So they captured all of these stories that had been passed down by oral tradition for hundreds of years and started to write them down. And so the Grimm brother fairy tales were moral kind of fabric stuff to give you backbone, to help you know right from wrong, good from bad, darkness from light, etc. And what happened was, when Disney came along and started making cartoons and animations and stuff based on these, they removed all of the good stuff and all of the moral fibre and twisted them so that they were no longer good guiding stories. They became quite dark and nefarious. So that was Disney's model, was to take something that was meant to bolster our fabric of our society and our moral kind of compasses and point them the wrong way. Okay, so when I say fairy tales, not Disney. Disney is what happens when, bad actors get hold of good stories. They take all the good out of the stories and give you the carcass. So go back to the originals, the Grimm brothers fairy tales and stuff like that. Classic stories. The Emperor's New Clothes is a good example, relevant even today. So there is a lot that's there, but when I look at this list, on the last thing on the list I've just brought up on the screen, some religions and some parts of religion, but religion per se isn't necessarily team good. And you could argue, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree, that some religions belong on the side of team bad, and some aspects of religion belong on the side of team bad. So I'm not saying religion, but what I'm saying is there are some parts of some religions that are extremely good, but you have to navigate your own way and apply wisdom and discernment. And don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and just say it's all a load of rubbish, but equally don't just accept everything just because. That's kind of where we're going with that. But historically, religion, and not the ones that are some religions have to tell you that they're peaceful religions because they don't act it, they don't demonstrate it, and they don't look it, and so they keep saying we're peaceful. If you're peaceful, you're peaceful. Some religions use fear and guilt and things like that, so I'm not really talking about them either. What I'm talking about is the kind of core, you could call it Christian, the core Christian stuff, but I'm not religious. But what I'm saying is those core teachings for hundreds of years, longer really, and even to this day, were one of the guiding compasses for what is good and how to be good and how to make difficult decisions and things like that. So there's a lot in there that could be of use, whether you're religious or not. Some of the stories are very inspiring, So in terms of me doing my job, which is to say, well, look, we are in duality. You can divide it into, roughly speaking, good and bad. And the stuff on the left there, music, lyrics, social media, Hollywood and TV, games and woke education, are banging a drum for team bad. But there is really good stuff as well. And oddly enough, if you look at the list, it's almost like the digital age on the left versus the analog age on the right. So maybe there's something in that as well. But we will now press on to see what's next, because there's so much to get through. Oh yeah, so summarising it, the bad side you could say is hate, and the good side you could say is love. So are you on team hate or team love is the ultimate question. Okay, so choose your side. So I ask you again, do you choose team hate? Now, if the answer is yes, I'd be very surprised if you're watching this show, but if the answer is yes, then you support team hate. That's your choice. That's free will. I'm not telling you what to do. Now, do you choose team hate? If the answer is no, then do you choose team love? If the answer is no to the second question, so if you say, okay, do you choose team hate? No. Do you choose team love? No. Then you support team hate. There is no fence to sit on in duality. And I'll explain why. If you say you don't support team love, it automatically means you support team hate. But if you do choose team love, then you support team love. So there is no middle ground. And that's quite fascinating. Well, let me explain that. And there's lots of examples I could use, politics, religion, etc., but I'll try and be as neutral as possible. Let's use a theoretical scenario. There's two villages. One village. Each village has like a kind of. We're going to kind of mix up politics and war and everything here. So basically, you live in a village, and one guy's advocating for attacking the next village to steal their cows and get their gold, right? So that one's pro-war, that's a hateful thing. Someone else in that village is saying, no, peace. Got to have peace. Peace at all costs. And not only that, but no violence, okay? And you are one of the people, one of the elders in that village. You get a casting vote. And you go, yep, I'm all for war. Great. Then war's likely, okay? So you've made your choice. You've chosen team hate. That's the first choice. But if you go, don't really want to go to war, but for whatever reason, I don't really want to vote for the peace option either. I'm just going to not vote. Okay. Well, if it's hung, if it's balanced, the group that wants war will win. Why? Because they've already chosen aggression. They've already chosen violence. So they will use aggression and violence against their opponents. Not just the enemy, but the ones that want peace. The ones that want peace are pacifists. So they will always yield. And so, unfortunately, generally speaking, what is good will always yield, and what is bad will always try and take over. That's the nature of things. So if you choose not to support what is good, you invariably support what is bad. It's as simple as that. So you either have to support what is good and stick your flag in the ground and say, I am team love, team good. Or if you know there is a choice and you don't do so, your silence, your inaction supports team hate. So there is no middle of the road. There is no fence. There is no hiding. There is no abstaining from choice. In reality, in duality, you are making a choice. Your silence is consent. So you have to express what you want. It's as simple as that. And that's why I drew this little flowchart out. So you do have a choice. It's, do you support team hate or do you support team love? But understand that silence is consent to team hate. Okay? And if you depending on where you're at in life and what your experience is and what you understand about politics or war or religion or anything, you can see this played out time and time again. It's one of the kind of archetypal things that people don't really voice. So we're voicing it here. Okay? So you have a choice. That's what we've established. And this is now the second thing. So the first one is you live in duality, and I've talked about the choice. Do you choose this or that? But the reality is, it's a bit more nuanced. You have a choice. And this is a slide that I produced for episode 72, so I'll put a link to that as well. And episode 72 is right, wrong, good and bad. And it explains all of these things in much more depth than we're going to go into here. But I just wanted to do this as a quick reminder. So what we're looking at on the screen, if I just grab my little pointer here, what we're looking at is the y-axis is your vibration and the x-axis is time. And let's just say that's on the left is when you were born all the way to when you die. So that's your lifespan. And vibration, so you came in and you had a medium to low vibration, but you've made choices and your vibration is now up here. So number one, the first mark on this is right now, this is where you're at. And this question mark means right now you've got a choice. And hey, right now Mark just asked you in this live show, do you choose team hate or team love? So you've got a choice. And whether you answered it out loud, you made a choice. You on the inside, you would have answered that question. Now, if you chose team love, that's has a good outcome. If you chose team hate, that has a bad outcome. Good and bad is in relation to your vibration. So the higher your vibration, the more team good you are, the more good you are. The lower your vibration, the more team bad you are, the more hate. So the vibration is a way of describing the range of possibilities of your character, from good to bad, from love to hate. And what this is showing us is that every time you make a choice, no matter how big or small or trivial that choice is, you either move up to being more good or down to being more bad. It's as simple as that. Now, this other question mark over here where there's a number 5 is just reminding us that you might make the wrong choice and drop down a bit, but then there's always a chance to make another choice down the line and you can come back up. But the optimum would have been that you end up in life up here because you made a series of bad choices, you came down, but then you did redeem yourself, so you still ended up coming back up a bit, is what this is showing. Or you can keep making the wrong choices and become more and more team hate and team bad, and you end up down here. It's your choice. But what is this showing us? This is showing us that our choices have an outcome, that they actually determine who we are. And do you remember near the start I said, the choices you make today determine who you are tomorrow. So this is why. And just to remind us, then what we're talking about here, good and bad, right and wrong, these is at any choice point, when you've got a choice, which is that question mark in the middle, you can, for example, be peaceful or aggressive, or you can be generous, or you can think like a thief. Thieves don't just steal time, they steal money. They don't just steal money, they steal time from people as well. You can be bitter or you can be forgiving. So say, for example, you've got a choice. Do you forgive someone or do you carry the resentment? Well, that would be a good example. So if you choose forgiveness, you become more good. If you choose not to let go of it, you become even more bitter, etc. Even trivial little things. You're on a train, it's busy, people are tired, they just want to get home. You want to listen to your music, you haven't got headphones. Do you put your music on, or do you respect the peace and quiet of the people around you? If you put the music on, you've done something bad. You've been selfish, you're being noisy, you're disrespecting the people around you. That's all bad. If you say, you know what, I'll respect the people around me, they don't want to listen to my music, then you're showing respect, you're caring about others, you're putting others first. That's good. Seems like a trivial choice, doesn't it? But it still has an outcome. You become more good or more bad depending on that choice alone. So that's what we're kind of understanding, is that you have a choice. And I don't know who this woman is, but I needed a picture of someone pointing. And so this is just to kind of remind us that you have a choice. Do you choose the bad or do you choose the good? You have a choice. Just remember that. And so that is what people talk about when they talk about free will. You didn't necessarily choose the environment. So you don't choose what happens to you, but you do choose your response. That's what choice is all about. How do you choose to respond? Okay? That's the crux of choice. And free will is another way of saying your right to choose. Okay? So let's just remind ourselves, because there's that word again, free will. And we're talking about from when we're 18. So if you're coming up to 18, hopefully this is gold, because you're starting to understand stuff that will put you in good stead. And if you pass the age of 18, don't worry, it's never too late. You know, you can always put this into effect, and also you can help. You can be the wise elder that uses this knowledge to guide others. Okay? So it's kind of a win-win all round, really. But it comes down to responsibility. So I talked about free will, and the responsibility is yours. And this is one of the other things. If you want to be an adult, it's not because you're 18, it's because you take responsibility. I know people who are 40, 50, 60, and they're not adults. Not in the truest sense, because they will not take responsibility. Now, look at that curve. Yes, when you're born up to the age of 11, someone else is responsible for you. At the age of 11 to 12 to 17, you're growing in responsibility. And at 18, you are potentially responsible. Potentially. But I know people who are grown-ups who will not take responsibility for their choices or their actions, and they are just basically big kids. Okay? Responsibility is really, really important. So the third thing that is really important to understand, because the second one is you have choice, the third one is you are responsible. Now, I'm going to read out some statements. Be honest. Have you ever said these things or heard yourself think these things? Okay? They made me do it. Everyone else does it. It's not a big deal. No one saw me. Roughly translates as I got away with it. I only did it the once. No one got hurt. It doesn't mean it was right. It just means that no one got hurt. It's just a small amount, ... whatever that relates to. It's just trying to diminish it. Well, it wasn't that much. I didn't drink that much. I was only 30 miles over the speed limit. You know, I only borrowed 20 quid off you. You know, I only stole 20 quid from your wallet. It's only a small amount. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to impress people. I was going to put it back, said the kid who took their parents' car and wrapped it around the lamppost. That kind of thing. Not me, by the way, I'm just saying. I needed the money. Oh, well, because I needed it, that justifies X, Y, or Z. I had no choice. I'll get back to that one. I'm a victim. That goes along the lines of, it's not my fault. You know, I didn't really have a choice. Let's be honest. Have you ever used those to explain a bad choice or a bad decision? They're excuses. Guess what? If you're using those to justify what you're doing, then you're choosing team hate. You might not think you're a bad person, but you are demonstrating badness and therefore supporting team hate. These are all excuses to shirk and avoid personal responsibility. They made me do it. It's just a small amount. In other words, always trying to dodge the issue or make out that you're a victim and therefore you didn't have any choice. You always have a choice. Sorry, if I apologise. If I sound like I'm telling you off, I've walked this journey. I might as well be telling myself off, okay? So I'm being firm. It's like I'm being firm because I realise the truth, and I wish someone had this conversation with me 25, 35, 40 years ago. I wish I could go back in time and tell myself some of this stuff. This truly is, I wish, one of those, I wish I'd known this 20, 30 years ago stuff. So I'm not telling you off, but I'm trying to impress upon us all, including me here, how important this stuff is. Because going back to that list, wasn't that long ago I was hiding behind excuses like this as well for certain bad behaviours or certain poor choices. Okay? So I tell you how to shift from that to being a proper grown-up adult, and I don't mean grown-up in age. I take full responsibility. I do not let others make choices for me. Yes, someone can suggest something. Why don't we do this? But I decide whether I do it. I understand I own the consequences. Really important. Accountability. I am not a sheep. I do not follow people because there is a group of people, and therefore if everyone else is doing it, I will do it. There is always a choice. There is always a choice. Now you could probably think of a situation where you go, well, look, the choice is either do this thing that I know is wrong or die. Still a choice. You just have to decide what's more important. Living but being wrong and bad and harming others, or making the ultimate choice, which might be self-sacrifice for the right reason. Surviving isn't justification. There is always a choice. It really comes down to how rooted are you in love versus hate, and other factors which we'll get to. Okay, but if you just accept that there's always a choice, even if the choice would cost you dearly, there's always a choice. And let's be realistic. How likely are you going to be ending up in a situation where it's that bad? Here's a good one. I am honest with myself. By the way, this is what I mean is say this to yourself. Okay, so say I take full responsibility. I do not let others make choices for me. I understand I own the consequences. I am not a sheep. There is always a choice. I am honest with myself. Be honest with yourself about where you're coming from. Do you remember when I went through the list and I asked you to just be honest with yourself about whether these things apply to you or not? I am not a victim. That's like the anti-woke antidote, because victim mentality allows people to shirk all kinds of responsibility. But if you are responsible, grown up, adult, proper person, then you are not a victim. Even if you are victimized, even if others do wrongdoing against you, do not let yourself become a victim. Then you will retain your own power. Then you will retain free will and the right to make choices. If you take that route, then you support team love. And look, all these slides will be available in the write-up on the podcast, so you don't worry about writing stuff down or anything. I'll do screenshots so you can get all of this. But you are responsible. Here's that woman again. Okay, so choices matter, but how do we go about making the right choices in life? So, have you ever considered how you make a choice? Well, loosely speaking, these are the 6 ways that people make choices. And again, people don't talk about this stuff. We're not talking psychology here, and we're not talking neurobiology. We're talking life. So people make choices based on habits, emotions, ego, and I've put brackets fear just to highlight that fear is actually a facet of ego. And I talk a lot about that in some of the other shows, so if you're interested, just go to the website and do a search for the word ego or fear and you'll find it. Or you can make choices from a calm and neutral state, from the heart, or putting truth first. So these are the kind of building blocks, and that's why I've kind of made them as bricks. So these are the building blocks of how you make a choice. And it depends where you're coming from. But the problem is the outcome. So if you make choices based on habits, then you are playing out indoctrination. In other words, what you've been programmed to do by your education, by your environment, by the films, TV, computer games. If you are in habit, you are playing out pre-programmed reactions, and it's bad. And also, there's no choice. You can only really make a choice if you're awake, if you're present. If you're unconscious, you react habitually. Okay, and habits are generally not good, hence bad. Emotions. If you make choices emotionally, they will be irrational and bad. Okay. Now, there's always a slim chance that you make an emotional choice, or you make a choice based on emotions and it works out all right. But generally speaking, emotions lead to irrational choices. Bad. Ego, all the different facets of ego, including fear, the outcome is selfish and the outcome is bad. And just think about how people who were buying into mass hysteria and fear during the pandemic made terrible choices, like having experimental things stuck into them that resulted in them getting damaged. Okay, as an example of what happens when people come from fear, it doesn't normally have a good outcome, it normally has a bad outcome. Calm and neutral state. So if you make choices from a calm and neutral state, it's generally a good outcome. If you make choices from the heart, now I don't mean romantic, like, you know, birds spinning around your head, eyes ding 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 ding. I mean from a place of love, then you generally have a good outcome. And if you put truth first, in other words, if you're more interested in what is the truth, then your choices will generally be good on the matter. And so that gives us the fact that habits, ego and emotions, team bad, team hate. Coming from the heart, coming from a state like a calm and neutral and peaceful state, and putting truth first, are team good. So if you start to pay attention to how you're making choices, I mean, if you look at someone that makes choices based on how they feel, that's emotions, that leads to all kinds of things where someone says, well, because I don't like what you're saying, then I feel threatened by what you're saying. Well, no, you feel threatened because you feel threatened. It's nothing to do with what I'm saying. That's when people are led by their emotions. They make all kinds of claims about that's hurtful, that's hateful. No, it's just an opinion. Your response is emotional, and therefore your reaction and your choices are not going to be good because you're coming from emotions. It's irrational, etc. You know, we've seen a lot of this in the last few years, so we should all kind of we all have the opportunity to be wise to it. So, heart, state and truth. Good. Habits, ego and emotions. Bad. So let's just reinforce that. Here's the list of the good and bad stuff. And if we look at, well, okay, let's come from the heart. We get all these arrows. So the arrows are pointing from heart to respect, humility or humble, charitable, forgiving, caring, generous, grateful, steadfast. So it all ties together. You can see how when you come from the heart, you generally demonstrate good outcomes and good choices. The state one is probably harder for people to understand, but if you are in state, as in a positive state, then it's referring to some of these things, like you would be calm, you would be accepting, you would be peaceful, you would have a gracefulness to you, you would be quiet when it's better to be quiet, and that comes from the state of being more neutral. Now I'll talk a little bit more about the state actually. And I said I wasn't going to talk spirituality, so I'm not going to talk spirituality, but when people just react, something happens and they just go off on one and they react. There's no choice. But have you ever noticed that successful people, you know, those managers or those bosses or those entrepreneurs or whoever, or maybe it was someone you know, but they don't react. They just sit back and observe chaos or whatever's unfolding. And they stay calm, they don't go emotional, important point. And from the calmness, they're able to observe, and then they can act. And they go, okay, you get that thing over there and put that fire out over there. You, could you please phone the emergency services? Could you just calm down? Could you three just take that person and go and comfort them? In other words, they're very good at sorting out situations and making good decisions. Why? Because they don't react to what's happening. They stay calm, they stay neutral, which means do not react. And the calmness affords them time to make good choices, to evaluate and then think and then act. So that's where state, in a very simple way, is very empowering and results in good choices. And it's the same, if you put truth first, then you become more truthful, you become more disciplined, and you become more faithful. Interesting. So we could kind of look at the red side, but I'm not going to. I don't want to give it more airtime. But basically, if you come from habits, you could look at that and go, okay, where does habits take us? Gluttony, for example, laziness, ego, where would that take us? Critical of others, proud, etc. Emotions, where would that get us? Greedy, aggressive, emotional, etc. So you can start to draw lines that way as well. And they all map out. Sometimes it's nicer to leave other people to do the work. So I don't want to give you all the answers, but you could take a screenshot or wait till I put it up on the podcast, and then you could get a pen and paper out and go, okay, habits, what do they cause? Ego, what do they cause? Emotions. But the real take home is habits, ego, emotions, bad. Okay, that's all we really need to understand. So are you coming from your habits or ego or emotions? If so, then think about shifting gear, right? Now I'm going to read a whole load of stuff out, and this is another quick game, okay? Just keep a score. Be completely honest. These are actions, activities. Don't worry about how trivial you think they are. Just keep a score, and then I'll explain. So if I say anything, have you ever done it, or do you habitually or routinely do it, okay? And I know the writing's small, but there was quite a lot. So, swearing, wearing your pyjamas out in public, dropping litter, infidelity, fantasizing over someone else's partner, coveting, that's the old coveting your neighbour's wife type thing, one night stands, drugs, smoking, alcohol, reckless driving, lying, stealing, recreational sex, spike someone's drink, playing computer games that glorify or are centered around theft or killing, adulterer, watch porn, got stoned or drunk. If you've got a dog, you let your dog poop somewhere, you've left the dog mess out in public, you haven't picked it up. Masturbation, indecent outfits, i.e. wearing stuff that you know is showing far too much flesh in the wrong area, in the wrong context as well. Like, it's one thing in a nightclub, it's another thing in public in the middle of the day when there's kids around and stuff like that. Graffiti or vandalism, wished someone harm or that they were dead. Okay, so if I said it was a game, but if we're being completely honest, hands up probably did quite a few of them at some point. But so there's no judgment, but I'm really wanting to ram it home that these things are all manifestations of team hate, team bad, okay? Because in some way they show disrespect to yourself or to others, or any of the things that are in red. And again, you can kind of pause and look into it, but I want us to be honest about who we are and where we are, because how can we apply all of this to everyday life? Are there strategies so that we can be more team good? But one of the things I said in that list earlier was, I'm honest with myself, which is why I went through that little exercise of all these things. Let's just be honest about the things that we do and recognise, we might not understand why, but recognise that they are on the wrong side. They're going to make us drop our vibration and become more bad. So now, are there strategies? Are there things that we can apply in everyday life to be more team good? So this is in no particular order, and we're coming to the end of the show. But this is some of the kind of key things at this level, without getting too deep into things that people can do. So find a good role model, someone who demonstrates those good qualities. Someone, it doesn't even need to be someone that you actually know. It doesn't even need to be someone that's real. It could be a character in a good movie, or, what would they do? if you're stuck for how to act or what choices to make, say, okay, well, what would that person do? Find a good role model. It could be someone historic or it could be someone contemporary. Practice coming from your heart and being in a calm state. So next time you have to make a choice, if you realise that you're in your habits or you're being emotional, calm. Intend to come from your heart, slow down, and then see how you move forwards. Not see how you feel, see how you move forwards. Become someone who seeks the truth of matters. Team bad, deception. Team good, truthfulness. So make truth a goal in life. Really important. Be wise about who you spend time with. Look, if you've got a group of friends, maybe you're still at school, maybe you're off to university, whatever it is, or maybe in life where we are, that's fine. But look at your friends. And if I just go back to this list, here's a good one. Are they critical and judgmental of others? Are they always talking about people behind their back? That's a really good indicator, because that is actually underlying badness. Now, you don't have to do anything, but I want us to understand that people don't go around going, I'm a bad person. They might be funny, they might be charismatic, they might be entertaining, but we've got to get past the surface structure and look at, okay, what are they actually demonstrating? So going back to this list, are they swearing too much? Are they being vulgar? Are they spitting? Do they steal occasionally? Are they ungrateful when you help them or do something? Are they lying? Are they overly vain and proud? Do they disrespect? They might not disrespect you, but do you see them disrespecting others or groups? Are they bitter, or can they forgive? Are they selfish? All of these things are a clue. Are they team bad, or are they team good? Now, I'm leaning on pointing out the bad stuff, because it's the bad stuff we need to avoid. But equally, do they demonstrate that they're charitable? Do they carry themselves with a certain grace? Can they be calm? Are they quite generous? And I don't mean they're buying people's affection with money. Generous with their time, generous with their food, generous with what little they have. Do they see things through, or do they let people down all the time? In other words, are they steadfast? If they say something, do they carry it out? Can you trust them? Are they reliable? Do they speak the truth? If you ask them, will they... your friend is the one that will point out you've got a bit of salad in your tooth. The people that let you go out the restaurant and don't tell you, oh, by the way, just, get a toothpick, they're not your friends. Do they respect you? Do they respect your property? Do they respect your things? Do they respect your time? These are all clues. So, going back to this, be wise who you spend time with. Ask yourself, go write down the 10 people you spend the most time with, and then write down, are they team, based on that list I've just shown, are they team love or team hate? Because there's a saying, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with in life. So surround yourself with team love. Remember, every single choice, even now, some of the choices are just what you think and how you choose to react. Remember, every choice impacts your vibration. Spend time with wise elders. Avoid echo chambers. What do I mean with that? Look, whatever your leaning is politically, or whatever your beliefs are religiously, or wherever you're at in life, if you're a student, then maybe you spend most of your time with people who are students studying the same course with the same ideology and the same beliefs. That's a echo chamber. All you will get back is the same stuff you're thinking. Find people who challenge you. If you're 20, see if you've got a relative or a professor or a work colleague who's maybe 40 or 60, and pick their brains. If you're blessed and you've still got your grandparents or your parents, ask them questions about life. Doesn't mean that you have to accept what they say, but you might just get surprised that they're not just old people and they might have something of value to say. So spend time with wise elders and avoid echo chambers. If you're just hanging out with people like you, you're just reinforcing you and you're not getting challenged. And we know where that leads. Switch off from social media once in a while, like I don't know, most of the time. Get your social media under control if you can. Get it down to say 5 minutes a day. Choose your entertainment wisely. Look, you could watch a Disney movie and be brainwashed into the team bad, or you could read Hans Christian Andersen or the Grimm brothers, or watch this podcast that I'll share with you, this woman who reads these books out on Rumble. Choose your entertainment that is actually going to support team good. I'm not Christian, but I listen to Christian radio because the songs are generally of a better quality vibration than the stuff I used to listen to when I wasn't as wise to all of this stuff. By the way, I'm still learning. Choose your entertainment wisely. Whatever you're giving your attention to makes you who you are. Read physical books, and I'm not just saying this because I'm an author, but the older the better. Go back to the classics. Grimm brothers, Hans Christian Andersen, turn of the century sci-fi, whatever, 18th, 19th century stuff. Go back to the old stuff, but also read physical books. It is actually a different thing that goes on in your brain. There was a study done, and children actually learn better from reading and writing on physical paper than they do from doing it on tablets. Reach out to clubs and groups, organisations, whatever, who are also team love. So I don't know what that means for you, but you might want to join an art class so you can surround yourself with creative people. You might, I don't know, maybe there's a young people's, one of these facilities where you can actually hang out and be off the street and be around good people, and maybe there's some wise elders there that can guide you. But basically, see if you can socialise and surround yourself with people who are team love. Avoid team hate activities. So, playing violent computer games, watching violent movies, watching porn, gossiping. Big one is gossiping. Look, we all do it, but if you find yourself seeking out gossip or engaging in gossip, just understand that you're basically just feeding the beast. You're feeding team bad, team hate, okay? So avoid team hate activities. Refer to previous lists of all the different things that we listed. They're not good. Communicate with people who will challenge you and hold you to a higher standard. So look, in fact, I might be jumping the gun. Probably jumping the gun. So communicate. That means talk to elders. Talk to people who you don't necessarily have to agree with them, but you don't have to be religious to talk to a priest. You don't have to be, if there's someone who's like a community club organizer or runs a local volunteer group or something, you don't have to get involved, but you could talk to them. You could talk to your grandmother, your grandfather, your uncle, your auntie, whoever, and be open to being challenged. Prove me wrong. If you've got an opinion of something, prove me wrong. A good friend of mine, he kind of said, look, the best politicians are the ones that can really understand the counter argument to what they believe and can actually argue for the other side. Because if you can argue for the other side, then you understand both sides. Then you really have tested out whether you believe what you believe, because you've looked at both sides, and then you can actually really have a kind of like a solid foundation. So find people that challenge you. Practice the art of decorum. Decorum means acting appropriately. Now, why do I bring this up? A lot of the things that people do that a team hate are things like being vulgar, being noisy, being lewd, being disrespectful of other people by how you carry yourself. Simple example. And I know some people are going to be very upset by me saying this, but wearing pyjamas to the supermarket or to drop off your kids at school is a very good example of the opposite of decorum. Now, I'm not talking about being posh or class stuff. I'm talking about being considerate to others in how you present in the world. And the more you practice it, it shifts things. That's all I'll say on the matter. But decorum really, really does matter. Years ago, I did an episode, before the live show, I did a podcast on do manners matter from a spiritual perspective, and it was a resounding yes. And that was quite interesting. And decorum kind of goes hand in hand with manners. Be accountable to someone. Now, this is the point I was going to make. Here I am. I'm extolling all of this stuff. That makes me accountable to you, because I have to live by this now, or you'll be able to say, well, you're in double standards, hypocrite. Okay? So I'm not saying you have to have a YouTube channel or a Rumble channel or do a podcast, but if you've chosen Team Good, tell someone. You might inspire them, but also then you say, I want you to hold me to account. When I slip up, occasionally I slip up, I might swear or something. I really don't hate, but I dislike swearing because I understand. And I did a whole episode on swearing where I talk about why swearing, there's an underlying problem to it. It changes your brain. Well, it's to do with your brain, basically. So I make the effort not to, but habit kicks in occasionally and I find myself swear. And my friends know I don't like swearing, so if I do swear, they'll hold me to account. So sometimes it's just simple things, but if you're held to account, and it could be, look, it might be that you say, look, my mum's passed away, so in her memory, I want to do better, so she's holding me to account, or I'm holding myself to account in her memory. It could be that kind of thing, So be accountable to someone can be a really powerful aid. And then cherish every day. Every choice is a chance to grow. And if we go right back, let's see if I can find it. We covered quite a lot. If we go right back to here, then every choice will either take you more towards good or more in the opposite direction. And that's really what it comes down to. So we've actually covered a whole load of stuff. I've been keeping an eye on the chat, and there's no questions come in, which is good. Well, it's always lovely to have questions, but hopefully that just means that everything's made sense and you're all following. Again, if you've been joining me live from YouTube or from Facebook, then I'd definitely get over to Rumble and find me on there. I'll put links below at some point as well. And that noise you can hear in the background, my collie dog's just down there and he's just decided to have a drink of water, which probably means that it's time to wrap up tonight's show. So I'm really grateful for all of you for joining me, and a bit of a different show today. Hopefully it's of value, and I can always do a follow-up if we need to go into anything more, but there's been a lot of food for thought tonight, and so really all that remains is for me to say, look, keep making the right choice. Every time there is a choice, make the choice that supports Team Good, Team Love. And I'll join you next Thursday for the usual live show. And also, if you're interested, on Sundays on Rumble, then there's Time with Books. But for now, God bless, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for being awesome and joining me for this episode. I'm truly grateful. As a spiritual person, I hope it's inspiring to realise that you're not alone, and that more and more like-minded people, just like you, are enjoying this live show. This means that you're part of a growing and awakening community, and together we're all finding the way back to God, going deeper than just ideas and beliefs, to experience firsthand real spiritual awakening. This is a journey of the heart, not the head. So take this moment to just become a little bit stiller, more present, and more neutral. Now notice what you notice when I ask you this question. What in this particular episode has been most challenging? Now, Who in your life at this particular time would benefit the most from knowing this too? Maybe it's one person, or maybe it's more than one. But because sharing is caring, it's really nice to know that you can actually share this show with them and therefore help them. This show is completely free to enjoy and benefit from. And did you know that in a few days I'll be producing a podcast audio version of this show, which will be available to download as an MP3 from our website and also available on all the usual podcast platforms. In this way, it's easy to share and it's easy to listen to or watch again and again whenever you need it. Now, speaking of free stuff, if you'd like other useful, helpful spiritual resources, then head on over to thewaybackgroup.org. There you'll find all kinds of free resources, articles, ebooks, MP3s, guided meditations, and a whole load of other stuff that's completely free and waiting for you to discover it. So that's all for this episode. But your journey and my journey continues. And so I look forward to having you join me next week for more revelation and exploration into spiritual things. And together, let's make more sense of life. Not just for us, but for our loved ones, so that we can help them too. So remember to subscribe and hit the notifications so that you don't miss out. Who knows what we'll be discussing next week? And the next question or topic might even be yours. Perhaps there's a reason you've been guided to this show. So God bless you. And remember, real change starts when we put into practice what we're learning, so that we go from thinking and doing to finally being. So take what you've learned today and keep on being the best version of you. God bless.